476.
Or 100. 100 is a uplifting song.
Huh?
100 is an uplifting song.
Yeah. Don't sing burdens are lifted.
Okay. We'll do that one. We'll do 476 and then 100.
Burdens are lifted at Calvary.
Alright.
Go ahead, Brandon.
That's the note. You ready?
Yeah.
Don't you play a little precursor?
Say something like
Okay. Hello, happy Sabbath, everyone. We're going to start the service now for the second half of the financial seminar. If you could please turn your hymnal to 476. We're going to sing Burdens Are Lifted at Calvary. Once again, 476.
Are lonely and dear. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Cast your care on Jesus today. Leave your worry and fear. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Troubled soul, the Savior can see every heartache and tear. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Calvary, Calvary. Burdens are lifted at Calvary. Jesus is very near.
If everyone would like to turn to page 100. Great is thy faithfulness. Once again, 100.
Great is thy faithfulness, O God, my Father. There is no shadow of turning with thee. Thou changest not, thy compassion, thy fail not. As thou hast been, thou forever would be. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Summer and winter and springtime and harvest, sun, moon, and stars in their courses above, join with all nature and manifold mercy and love. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me. Pardon for sin and the peace that endureth. Thy own dear presence to cheer and to guide. Strength for today and bright hope for tomorrow. Blessings all mine with 10,000 beside. Great is thy faithfulness, great is thy faithfulness. Morning by morning, new mercies I see. All I have needed, thy hand hath provided. Great is thy faithfulness, Lord, unto me.
Anyone have a request for a song? 532. If everyone can turn to 532. Day by day. 532, day by day.
Day by day, with each passing moment, strength I find to meet my trials here. Trusting in my Father's word this moment, I've no cause to worry or for fear. He whose heart is kind in yonder measures, gaze not to all the sea. What is there no pain and pleasure, mingling with oil with peace and rest? Every day the Lord himself is near me, with a special mercy for each hour. All my cares he fain will bear and cheer me. He whose name is Counselor and Power, the protection of his child and treasure, is a charge that on himself he laid. As your days, your strength shall be in measure. This the plea to made. Help me then in every tribulation, so to trust thy promises, O Lord, that I lose not faith's sweet consolation, offered me within thy word. Help me, Lord, when toil and trouble mating, eager take as from the Father's hand. One by one, the days, the moments fleeting, till I reach the promised land.
Amen. Amen.
All right, let's pray before we begin. Our Father in heaven, we want to thank you, Lord, for bringing us here to learn and to educate about finances, Lord. I pray, Lord, that as we are about to start, you may open our minds and our hearts that we may be able to listen and learn and apply what we have learned in our lives. Thank you again for all the gifts that you bestow upon us, Lord. We know that all this are belongings that you wisely bestow upon each one of us, that we may be stewards of these resources. And help us, Lord, to use them to your glory. Thank you for listening and for answering our prayers. In Jesus' name, amen. We have our speaker. All right.
So Hensley is preparing at the back. I was speaking to a few of the parents. One of the person he was supposed to come and help was not able to come with him. So I spoke to, because I was mindful of the ages of Vinitas, and then we have Andrew, and then we have Joanne. Because I was mindful, and then we have another young one, and we had somebody who had volunteered. They were going to help with that, and so that we could have different things. So the parents said it's okay, they can sit in. I know it's a longer hour, but Hensley will have to combine so that it is interactive, and everybody else can get something out of it. So I'll just give the mic to Hensley, and he will introduce himself, and then we can start with the program.
Okay. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to come to your home and talk about money. I brought my notepad and my pen. I would really like for this to be interactive. The whole idea about money, it's not. I really love to understand how you guys feel about it, and then we're going to make the conversation a little bit more interactive. But first, let me talk about myself. I don't know that I deserve to stand and talk to you guys about money, but I'll try to sell my credibility a little bit. So I work for Citibank. I think you had a little thing that described me a little bit? Okay. So I work for Citibank. And right now, I work in the credit card portfolio for Citibank. So, who has a credit card? Who has a credit card in the room? Oh my God, almost everybody. This is good. So, the business that I work in, we have about 100 million credit cards in the country. And we have about $400 billion of money that people owe us. So, the way we make money is you shop, you put it on your card, you owe me, and I charge you interest on it, and then we make money, right? So I am very passionate about people not doing that behavior. And I go out every time I have time to talk to people and say, don't do that. And we'll talk about that a little bit and why you shouldn't do it. I've been in finance and banking for the last 15 years. I have primarily worked on the deposit side so for the first part of my career, I worked on the deposit side. So you think about checking account, home equity line of credit, money market account, all of that kind of stuff. The latter part of my career, I work more on the investing side. So you go to the bank, you put your money, usually it's on one side of the house. So the banker, like a local branch, will collect your money. And we're the guys that make money for the bank. So right now for Citi, I have about 20 people that work for me. And our job is to make money for the business. Any question around that? All right. So let's make sure for the time that I'm here, she's told me a lot about how chatty you guys are, how fun you guys are. Let's make this fun. Because I think the whole idea about money is sometimes what really worries me is that a lot of people are very scared to talk about money. And the reason I know that is because I see the numbers on the back end. And I know that people obviously have issues talking about it. And because you have issues talking about it, you have trouble managing it. So I'm going to start with just a little concept that I think about, because I try to relate money and time. So imagine for a second. So I want everybody to follow me on this journey, okay? So imagine for a second that all of us had somebody in our lives that really, really loved us, okay? I'm talking about the kind of love that perhaps only a mother could understand for their child, but they really, really loved us. Every day you wake up in the morning, right? There's an account for you, and somebody deposits $86,400 in that account. The couple of rules: you have to spend the money every day. So you get $86,400. Are you guys tracking with me? Yeah. Right? So you got to spend that money every day. It doesn't roll over. So if you wake up the next day, you can't carry money you didn't spend the day before and roll it the next day. Right? You got to spend it every day. So can you guys just, I don't want to put anybody on the spot, right? So if you're a mom, your kid gets theirs, you get yours, okay? You can't share, that's your kids and yours. Can somebody tell me, if you want to volunteer, could you tell me what you would spend your money on? So you would spend yours on real estate. When you say real estate, would you buy it? What do you mean?
Buy and develop.
You would buy and develop. Okay, I buy that. Yes.
Real estate as well.
You would spend your money on real estate. Okay.
Let's bring out the stock market maybe.
You would what?
Invest in some stocks.
You would invest in some stocks. Man, you guys are good. All right. Yes. So just so I know, would you spend all $86,400 on real estate?
Sure. And then the next day I would start a company so that I can have his $86,400.
I like how you're thinking. I have an office next to mine. You could take it. So would you spend all $86,400 on? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry. Is it too loud? Okay. Would you spend all $86,400 of yours on stocks as well?
Probably not all of it, and whatever money I spent, I would put it in different stock holdings, so I would see different return or loss.
Remember, before you go to bed every day, you got to spend it.
Okay, now it's working.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody else? Good choice. Real estate. Yes, ma'am.
I would spend all I will work. For me, I want to work in the inner city with those people.
Okay.
And I would spend all my money. I would develop housing because I would look for the poorest districts in which to work. Every state, I would go around spending my money like that.
Okay. So you would do that every day consistently, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Consistently.
I like that. I like that a lot. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Charity.
You would give to charity. I like that. All right. Anybody else? Again?
No. I was gonna say,
You can tell me what you do tomorrow. It's still cool. I'm okay with
charity,
that.
would you get the money back in taxes, or would
Remember, every day you wake up, you get $86,400 every day. There's one way you don't get that money, is that you don't wake up. That's the only condition you don't get the money. Yes, sir.
So just before you got here, we were talking about tithing, so obviously 10% would have to go every day.
On your daily?
Church.
On your daily? So the 86.4? Okay. I like that.
It would be of every earning. So every time you got 86, we take out the 10% for the tag.
Right. Okay. So I presented this to you guys as a hypothetical, right? I said, imagine if you have somebody that does that for you, right? Okay. You don't have to imagine. Every day we wake up, all of us in this room, we get 86,400 seconds of your life, right? So the reason I asked that question is it ties into everything that you do. So if we're going to spend an hour together, what that means to me is you're investing 3,600 of your seconds to learn something that you could do better in real estate. You're still investing in real estate. You could ask me a question about real estate. We're going to talk for an hour. That's 3,600, right? That's how I look at time. That's how I look at my investment in myself, my investment in others. So if you're saying 10%, what does that come to? Does that come to a couple of hours? That means a couple of hours of our time should be invested in others, in fellowship, in church, and all that kind of stuff. That's actually there for others. So the concept of money is directly related to time, right? So as we go forward, we're going to talk about stocks, right? Investing in stocks requires some knowledge in stocks. The knowledge comes from using your time to learn about it, to talk to people who know about it, right? And then you leverage what you've learned. So in a way, you're taking the 86,400 and you're multiplying it. I like more, I don't like less. So I take my 86 and I want to multiply it. And the only way you multiply stuff is just by learning more or by meeting people who ultimately teach you more, and then you could then invest in it, right? So what do you guys care about? Because I've got stuff I want to talk about, but what do you guys care about? Remember, I've been in the industry for a very long time. So I want you to challenge me in the knowledge that I know. What do you guys want to talk about? Yes, ma'am. You want to talk about properties, okay? And would it be okay if I just lump that up with real estate then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please feel free and say what you are interested in.
All right.
Please feel free. Just raise your hand and yeah.
Yes, sir.
I'd be a little bit interested in government policy and specifically related to, the creation of the money supply.
Okay.
So hidden inflation, stuff like that.
Sure. You're taking me back to first year of grad school. That's awesome. Yes, sir.
I'd like to learn your top 10 best lessons that you learned about finance.
Okay. I will make that very easy for you. There won't be 10, but I will make it very easy for you.
How about some insider information at the Citibank?
We don't want to lose
I see you. You're trying to have me go to jail. Yeah, I think, yes, sir.
So I guess kind of two things that I'm interested in. I guess avoiding student debt,
Okay.
and then the other thing was I just had. You can go to somebody else while I think of it.
Okay.
I'll pick it up real quick.
If you don't mind, I will broaden that a little bit and just talk about debt. Would that be okay? Okay. Yes, sir.
Good rates to go into, like say you're going to get a mortgage or something, you're like a mortgage
Right.
rate, a car loan rate,
Sure.
credit card rate mostly,
Sure.
and like a comfortable rate that you think you should go into and maybe ones that you should avoid.
Sure. To talk about rate, I will broaden it and talk about risk, but we'll come to rate, okay? Because rate is, think of rate as a price. It's just, I charge you something, that's all rate is. But there's a reason I charge you a price, and that's what we call risk. So what you want to do is to not think about rate, but think about risk. Because risk means you're giving your money away to somebody, right? So you want to reduce that and keep it for yourself, right? So, but we'll talk about that. Yes, ma'am.
Or investment.
Investment. What kind of investment?
Real estate.
Do you want to do real estate investment? Jesus, you guys are all want to buy the entire place. Yes.
If you have any personal investments that you've found successful, maybe within the last.
You want to get in my portfolio,
Maybe
right? Okay.
It'll help you out also.
Sure. Okay.
A little bit that globalism and
Okay.
maybe especially more of what's happening with the populist nationalism.
Okay.
So the separating of economies versus the expansion of a worldwide economy kind of thing.
Sure. Okay. I know. I'll try to figure out how to. Yeah, I think you wanted to finish the last thing you asked, right?
Budgeting.
Budgeting. That was one of the things I came in to talk about today. So that's good. Yes, ma'am.
Like, how can a young person start an investment with no money?
That is a very, very, very good question. Very good. Yes, ma'am.
In this religion, we're encouraged not to gamble.
Right.
So when I
Uh-oh.
started looking into stocks,
Okay.
it seemed like a really high risk is like a type of gambling.
Okay.
So I want you to go a little bit more into details with the risk involved in stocks.
Okay.
Stocks and bonds.
Okay. This is the time when I have to be very sensitive to the religion, because a lot of investing is, a lot of what I'm going to talk about is some form of gambling. So I have to learn as to how you guys define what gambling. If you're buying a house, you're gambling. So I have to figure out. I have to figure out where I draw the line. So if I do cross the line, could somebody just stop me?
Can I ask you why did you say to buy a house is gambling? If you're buying for the purpose of living there,
Right.
that is called gambling.
Yeah, I think.
Plan to make a profit at the end.
Right.
The plan is to live there until you die.
Right. Yeah, a lot of what controls the value of your home are out of your control. So let's say you bought in Cabrini Green in Chicago. I live in Chicago. I live in the city. You bought in Cabrini Green 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20 years when I first moved into Chicago. The same neighborhood you bought into is very different than it is today. The house that you bought for $100,000 is worth $2 million today. You had zero to do with that. So it's a gamble. There are a lot of people that are making decisions about where you live and what all of the stuff that happens around it that have zero control, that you can't control.
I understand that part.
Right.
But if you're not selling it, is tomorrow it may be going down.
Right. Well, people bring this up all the time. It doesn't matter to me whether you intend to sell your house or not. You're getting assessed taxes, right? So even if you're living in the house, somebody comes tomorrow and tell you the same house you bought for $100,000 is now $2 million, you're going to get assessed taxes on the $2 million. Now, if you're a fixed income person, that makes a huge difference. You could be forced to sell the house rather than stay in the house. So I get, if you don't intend to sell the house, you still would like the value of the house to appreciate. You don't want to pay more into a home that's valued less. You likely would like to pay taxes on a house that's valued more, and at some point you're going to have to make a decision, especially if you're on a fixed income. Does that make sense? So the whole idea of gambling, I think it's a very sensitive. I'm in the finance industry. I'm able to have a conversation without emotions in it. But I have to be sensitive to how people feel about that. So there are a lot of people who are very strict with gambling. They say, this is me walking into a casino, and making a bet on some roulette. But if you want to broaden that definition, it's life in itself is a gamble, right? But I'm going to be very sensitive around that because I get it. Yes, sir. Okay.
One of the questions that my sister-in-law wants you to cover is, she has a child.
Okay.
What would you recommend?
That's one of the. That's
the
one.
baby is like 2-3 weeks old.
Right.
So she wants to know what you're recommending.
That's one of the things I want to talk about. And we're going to actually use the screen to actually walk through very simple reason why she should have started 3 weeks before, but that's okay. Yes.
So I think generally speaking, as we talk about, from a church perspective,
Right.
about what gambling is versus what it's not.
Right.
Typically, when you're working for it, it's not gambling versus the pure chance kind of a thing, where you go in kind of blind with the sole motive of making a quick profit and not having to do anything to
Right.
actually achieve that.
Right.
Versus something where you put in effort and work and you get a natural return
Right.
on what you're doing, which tends to be a more stable kind of a return.
Right. I get it, but you're getting very technical into something, and I'll explain something to you. I've been in the finance industry for a long time. The idea, the thing that works a lot, that baffles me, is that when people look at people in finance, they get the sense that a lot of them know what they're doing, right? And you're walking into a bank, it's reasonable. We've built the whole structure to be that way. The whole thing is gambling, okay? But I don't want to be getting into the tech. I want to be very sensitive. I'm not here to try to convince anybody. I think what my interest is in just to try to figure out what people want and then kind of hopefully connect the dots for you or give you the tools to go out and do it. I have this conversation with my kids all the time. There's the rules in life, the path to them. I don't want to get into the technicalities of.
Yeah, I don't
right.
think we're going to be talking about options, futures, or
Right.
derivatives.
I don't even intend to get to that level of detail. Unless somebody wants to, then we could spend it. Yeah, but I don't intend to. And the topics kind of seem broad enough that it's okay. I used to be an options trader. If somebody wants to do that, I could do that. But all right. So, is it okay if I pick the priority of how we go through this?
Yeah.
Okay. If I could ask a question, and if somebody could help me, why do you guys care about money? Why? Yes, ma'am. Is that true?
But that's how society makes it.
Okay. I'm not challenging you, I'm just asking. Okay. All right. In modern society, I think you need to have some form of money. Right. Okay. You don't, but we will talk about that. Why? You were touching something about student debt. I'm assuming you're going to school, right? To college?
I mean, yeah, I don't have any debt yet.
Okay.
Since I had my college paid for by like a government
Right.
organization, but now that that part is over, now I'm going to have to be starting to like think about covering part of it.
Okay. Good job, by the way, for your figuring out how to get your college paid for by somebody else. That's good. Very good. Why do you guys care about money? Why do you take your time, 5:41, to spend with me talking about money? Why do you care?
It's a tool.
Why do you care?
Top thing to trade to access something else that they want.
Yeah.
Food, you can get money up. I'm sure there's other things I can trade too, depending on.
You're telling me the what. You got to tell me why. Why do you care? Why do you even think about money? Why? You could be thinking about something else. Why do you think about money? Yes. Independence. Okay. Thank you. I like that. Yes, ma'am.
You have to give up your time, part of your life, in order to make it.
But why?
Giving up.
Why do you care about money? Money is just a thing. It's actually, to be honest with you, money is just a piece of paper. There was a time we used to actually back money with something. Then when the government realized we believed it without the backing, we stopped backing it. So money is just literally a piece of paper. Why do we care so much?
Because everything revolves around money.
Everything revolves around money. Okay? Everything revolves around money. Our value in society is directly tied to how much money we have. Okay? If I were to fall dead, drop dead here, there may be an ambulance or two that comes here and picks me up. If Bill Gates were to drop dead today, there will be billions of dollars that would disappear from the economy. His value and my value in the system we have, that we've always had for 9,000 years, is not the same. So the reason you should care about money is to try to take your value up in society. Yes?
Well, the money wouldn't disappear. It would just change hands.
Yes. It turns out with the system we've built, whenever you hear money changing hands, for the last 100 years, it changes hands usually in one direction. Okay? But what we're here to talk about is how do you get some of that drag back toward you. Okay? So, good idea. So now we've talked about money. The concept of introducing money, right? You've got to always link, especially to you guys who have young kids in the room, you have to link the idea of money and power and value to your kids. And this has to start at 2 years old. Okay? I was talking earlier outside. At 2 and 3, when my youngest was in kindergarten, they start to learn. The first thing you start to do in our system, you have to teach the kid to be able to distinguish money, right? Kids have to, we're moving, part of this is our fault, my fault. We've made people disconnect with the physical money. So you spend with a credit card, and I used to take, my daughter does this, we go to a store and she says, "Daddy, can I swipe?" And I'll hand her the card and she'll swipe. And she was losing the connection between when you do swipe that card, there is money that's leaving somebody, right? And one of the things you have to do, you have to be mindful with your kids, you have to connect them with the money, not the credit card. Okay? That psychological thing makes a huge difference. There's a reason why you take your kids to a grocery store when they're full, not when they're empty. Because I know, sitting in my office, that if you're hungry when you go to a grocery store, you're going to spend 40% more on groceries. Hopefully you're spending it on my credit card. That's what we do for a living. We know better than you would, right? So at very young age, 2, 3, 4 years old, you want to teach a kid to know the difference between money. So a kid at that age has to be able to distinguish between a dime, a penny, and all that stuff. As they go through life, at 5, they have to be able to tell the difference between a want and a need, right? So a lot of us, I think, especially in modern society, we struggle between, and there are billions of dollars that are getting spent every day in advertising and everything else to help you to help you find it very difficult to distinguish between a want and a need, right? So kids, it starts with kids. When McDonald's does its commercial and all of that, they're trying to blur the lines between a want and a need. So you have to, at a very early age, kids need to be able to understand there are things that I need versus things that I want, right? So if a kid is asking you, buy me this, buy me that, we see this all the time. And again, I am in the business where when I see that, it feels good for me because I know that this is somebody who's going to owe me part of the $400 billion that I just mentioned earlier. So when a kid goes to a grocery store and they say, get me this candy, you've got to be using that opportunity to say, is that something you need or is that something you want, right? Why should you care? Why does it matter that people want kids to know the difference between the stuff?
So that they won't drain your pocket.
So that they won't drain your pocket. But it connects to something she said earlier, or you said as well. Yes, why?
Because it's not only like them draining your pocket right now, but also them not draining their pockets later in life.
I really like that. Again.
Because if they never grasp the concept of a want and a need,
Right.
then they're going to be running around as adults, spending their money on things that they just want.
Okay. So it turns out, when you miss this concept early, it's almost nearly impossible to grasp it when you're older. And when you get older, you can, which is what we're going to talk about. It just takes, the older you get, the harder it becomes. And it's going to cost you a lot more each passing time that goes on. The funny thing is, the wealthier people in our society get it. They invest a lot for their kids to understand this concept. So I'll give you guys an example and then we'll start moving on to the topic. Back in the 60s, there was an experiment, I think it was like late 58 or so. There was a psychologist at Stanford University did an experiment. Who's ever heard of the marshmallow experiment? You've heard it? Can you explain what that is?
It's the concept of delayed gratification.
Okay.
So, you put kids in like a room and they put marshmallows in front of the kid. So if they give them a time range, if they can stay in that room without taking the marshmallows.
3 minutes, yes.
3 minutes. They will give them 2 marshmallows.
Okay.
So they'll reward them with an additional one. But if they took it and ate it immediately, they wouldn't get any rewards. So I think they followed the kids who had delayed their gratification later on in life and found that they were more successful in some way, shape or fashion than the kids that did not eat it immediately.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Did everybody get that? All right. They've since modified the findings of the experiment. It turned out class makes a huge difference. So when they did that back in the 50s, the level of inequality that we have today did not exist. And when they went back and looked at it, it turned out the class of the family actually even made it a lot worse than it actually was before. So that takes us into debt, okay? So if you're growing up in our society, people tell you save money, right? Everywhere you go, people say save money. What you will find, depending on what your definition of saving is, what you'll find is that there's this, just to put it bluntly, saving is for losers, right? And the reason for that is when you think about money and how to make money, there are 2 parts of the ledger. One part of the ledger is something that a lot of people don't pay attention to. So when the concept of inflation is a huge part of your purchasing power. If you had $10 today, your purchasing power of what the $10 could buy you today versus what it could buy you the same time last month or last year is very different. Okay, so you have to factor that in. You have to factor things like taxes. How much money is somebody going to tax you? You hear people, they'll walk into a bank and they'll say, I want a CD or I want a money market account. And then they invest their money into the CD or the money market account, not factoring the fact that when you do cash in on the profits of that, there's going to be taxes that come out of that investment. That tax is going to be at a 28 or 22 to 28% or 35, depending on your bracket. And then you're going to have fees, which is where my industry come in. And we know you don't know, and we fee the life out of you, okay? So you have to pay attention to all of this stuff if you're ever going to invest in the stock market. It is so important because if you had $1, if you earned $1, you could potentially have 20 cents left for you to invest. And that makes a difference between what type of investment you're even going to have access to. Okay? So the concept of inflation is something that's really, really important. Whenever you're trying to do any kind of investment, okay? Real estate is one where, I'll come to it, but real estate is an investment that's slightly separate only if you're making money off of the property. If you're living in the property, it falls into the same category like the other categories. But if you're making money off of the property, that's why if you're renting a house, every year your landlord comes in and says, we're going to increase the rent certain price, and people get mad when they do that. And the reason for that is the landlord is trying to keep up with inflation. So real estate, by that definition, if you're renting, if you're making money off of the property, you could always keep up with inflation. But if you're living in the property, you can't keep up with it, because every other thing, your mortgage is fixed, ideally. If not, then you're on some arm mortgage or something like that. But every other thing is fixed, so inflation does not care about that. But if you're making money off of it, it does. So when you think about money, most people just earn money. So you have a 9-to-5 job, or you have something where somebody's paying you. So the three things that I've just talked about are things that you should really, really be paying attention to. One is, if I'm earning money, what am I doing with that money? In the scenario where you're not doing anything, you have it in a checking account or you keep it under your mattress, the money is actually losing money, right? In that scenario. In the scenario where you're investing, say you go and buy a certificate of deposit or a money market account, what you want to do is to figure out the amount of money that you make when you net out taxes and inflation. How much are you really making, right? That's not obvious to most people. We make it not obvious to you, but there are ways, and we're going to go through how you could help yourself be better armed at actually getting ahead of that curve. Then you want to make a decision as to how you're managing the money that you have. So this all feeds into the question you asked me earlier, and I didn't get your name, sorry, that you asked around debt. I said I was going to broaden the topic to talk about debt. So I'll keep this very simple. The only money you should be owing should be in your house. Every other debt, you should be trying to get out of it as quickly as possible. Okay? That's the most simplistic way I could present that message. Now, you could start to layer things around. Yes, sir.
So you don't agree with using debt as an instrument to, as long as your debt rate is lower than your investment rate,
right?
You would be making a profit,
right?
And so margin accounts, even there's a big push for a while to take out a home equity line and then take that and go invest in stocks,
right?
Or whatever the case is. But so you don't agree.
How did that turn out for everybody else?
Yeah. Generally speaking,
right.
Poorly, but margin accounts are
right.
something that have been used since the 20s and
right.
have been making, depends on the
right.
person and circumstances, but it's a very popular operation or whatever. It's a tool.
I got it. So. Does everybody understand what he's talking about? So I'll give you guys a simple scenario, right? What he's saying is, if I've got $1,000 that I have in my bank, and I owe somebody $1,000. On the one that I have, I'm making 6%. On the one that I owe, I'm being charged 4%. He's saying, do I agree with that scenario? Because if you net them out, you're up 2%, right? Sounds reasonable. Why shouldn't we do that? We just crashed an entire economy behaving that way. Now, if you're a sophisticated person, you sit in an office like I do that on my accounts. The concept that we're mostly trying to teach directly violates that. And the reason for that is when you think about the differential between the 2%, what we've noticed is the value of somebody being debt-free. Like there's something I can't quantify. When people are debt-free, the way they feel versus if they had the 4% debt, it's not even close. So I would rather sacrifice the 2% to have them feel as good as they feel versus having a debt that's 4%. Does that make sense? Okay. So
to go back.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a the only money we should owe is in the property we're living in.
It's in your real estate.
Real estate.
Yes.
The one we're living in.
It could be the one you're living in, or if you're successful enough and you're renting out properties, then you could carry that debt too. Right. So long as you're getting money that's getting adjusted inflation-wise, that you could service the debt, real estate is by far the best debt you should have from a consumer perspective.
That's because if you're living in it, you're spending money on yourself, right?
Right.
And then vice versa, if you're selling it, you're getting money. So either
Right.
way, it's an asset, basically.
Right. And by the way, our tax system does not give you any value for your house that you're living in. You can't write any of it off. You can't do your roof in your house and write it
I thought
off.
you get up to $25,000
In your house,
if you're a married couple.
in your real estate,
Yeah, in the house you live in, you have to give extra to you. Maybe it's different.
no. You don't get any benefit. If you're renting a house to somebody else, yes. But if you're living in the house and you do repairs on your house or anything like that, you don't get. You get tax benefit from the state, like your real estate taxes. But even that, with the new tax law, has been significantly curbed.
But you still get
So.
depreciation, and you can take that against your cost.
That's what
Right.
I'm talking about. But
Yeah.
Thank you for the guidance to give us better direction. But as you said, you are in finance.
Right.
I don't want to encourage people about bankruptcy, but could you make it help you to understand? Some people, I don't know if they know how to beat the system.
Mm-hmm.
They have a beautiful house, cars. They can have bankruptcy 3 times, and then their credit after a couple of years or go up. How does the system, work like that?
Right. Obviously, with the bankruptcy stuff, you're talking about somebody who is completely over leveraged, right? If you're over leveraged, that means you've borrowed more than you could keep up with. That's what we've designed as a system to actually help you get back on track. So once you do that, then the law allows you to go in and get those things wiped out. Certain things, so your student loans and all of that are not part of bankruptcy, depending on whether you're doing Chapter 11 or Chapter 7, whatever bankruptcy you're going through. Once you've gone through that, then you no longer owe the money. And all your FICO score does is just track your ability to stay consistent on whatever you owe somebody. So you could build that back up, but your bankruptcy stays on your record for 10 to 15 years. So if you're coming to me for a credit card, we will pull that record up, and then somebody has to decide if this person has behaved sufficiently different enough from the behavior that got them to be bankrupt to begin with. So it's all very circumstantial. It depends on behavior, essentially.
But I can believe that some people I knew,
Mm-hmm.
they have high level, living. They deal with debt all the time. Credit cards,
Mm-hmm.
but huge houses, and then many businesses and beautiful cars. And then after that, I knew, they're crying bankruptcy. And in a couple months, or a year, the credit go up. I said, I can't believe that. So people may know what's going on in the system too.
Yeah, all your credit does, it's a score. All the score does, there are 4 or 5 parts of the score. Most of it, like 70% of it, is just how much if I trust in you enough to give you money, what is your behavior in treating that money? It doesn't track, it's not going to adjust based on whether you've been bankrupt before or not. So yeah, your score it's actually very simple. My wife had moved here from England. She achieved an 800 score within like 3 or 4 months. It's not that hard. To get loan though, it takes somebody reviewing your overall history to be able to figure things out. The one thing I would tell you is, I haven't been in finance for a very long time. One of the things I've noticed is, don't always believe what you see in terms of just the stuff you're seeing. There are a lot of things people do that seem very interesting to me. So I have friends that I know for a fact that I have more money than they do, but they live more lavish lifestyles than I do. So they're on vacations, posting stuff on Facebook and all that stuff. I've been around for so long that I don't I believe what I believe. I believe what I know to be true. And there's a lot of noise in the system. We see Bernie he got through a lot of stuff for 25 years. There are a lot of people who fooled the system for significant periods of time, but I would not want to be one of them. Yeah, there are a lot of people like that. You could watch CNBC for a night and you will find thousands of them.
Okay, just one thing, guys. We have a lot to cover.
Right.
For the interest of time, can we let Hensley go through the stuff that Joel and other people put through? And I'm looking at my list. We gave him more than 10 items.
That's okay.
So if you have a question, let's pack it, and then let's see how we get, so that people can learn. At least all the questions that we posted, everybody can learn something in this session.
Okay.
And those that are also live streaming, they can also follow rather than us just going. Is that okay?
Yeah, very good.
All right, some of this I will combine because I think a lot of them tie into something that I want to talk about. I think at the end of the day, to be very honest with you guys, I want to show you guys how easy it is to make money within the system and the rules that we have, okay? It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a genius to be rich. It's the system that we've set up. And my goal, if I left here today and you guys did what works, I think you would be fine. Okay, a lot of it is noise. A lot of the stuff that you hear every day, there's a lot, but not all of it should be things that you're focusing on or spending your time on. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about risk. I think that came up, and because I talked about debt and the concept of debt, I'll talk about risk. Okay, so we live in a country where all of us are essentially numbers. I know sometimes people find it very difficult to take this concept, but to most people, all of us are just numbers. So when you walk in, somebody has to figure out how to separate the numbers, how to separate you from me and anybody else. So many years ago, some people invented what we now use as the risk score, credit score rating, right? So most of us use FICO, which is it's a company called Fair Isaac that came up with the score. I work for a bank. We've got about 20 of our own scores, but they all essentially are the same thing. And all it is somebody is trying to determine how trustworthy you are. That's all this thing does. And recently, there's been some major changes that have happened, like in the last month or so, because we used to include your ability to pay your electric and water bills and all that stuff. And some people argued, and the law was changed, so that stuff has been taken out a little bit. But think of a credit score as how trustworthy you are, right? So if your sister comes to you and say, borrow me some money, you don't necessarily look at them as numbers, you look at it as your sister, right? So that factors into your ability to say, okay, I'm just gonna give you the money. But the world doesn't work that way. The world works in, the world works in, somebody has to make a determination on how trustworthy you are. So now you have to say to yourself, when you look in the mirror, do I want to go through the world and have people think I'm trustworthy or not? Right? So that's how I say you should treat your credit score. It has to be a responsibility on how you want to look, how do you want people to look at you when you're not talking to people who know you? That's the only way we have to judge people. So, the more trustworthy you are, right? If you live in a neighborhood where everybody trusts everybody, what happens? This doesn't happen in my neighborhood in the city, but when everybody trusts everybody, whenever I go to like Winnetka or Wilmette and I see people tend to trust people there more, I notice something that's a little bit different than where I live downtown. What happens? They leave the doors unlocked. They don't lock, they start their car and they're in the house still having breakfast, right? When you translate that into our world, it means I charge them no price or very low price. I don't need to charge them more. I know who they are. I feel comfortable. But if I move into a different neighborhood and I start my car and I don't know any of these people, right? My heart blood pressure goes up. And I'm not necessarily sure who I'm dealing with. Think about credit score the same way. When people don't feel like you're trustworthy, they charge you more money. It's not good for you. It can't be good for you. You can't live in a community where people don't trust you that much. So this is how credit score works. Once you grasp that concept, the financial services industry doesn't seem archaic to you. All you have to do is to try to get somebody to trust you more. This is why con people do it very, very well. There are all kinds of ways in which they try to deceive people that they trust them. So in the credit card business that I spend most of my time in, trust for us translates in multiple ways. When you apply for a credit card, there's somebody that's determining, should we give this person a card? That's one level of trust. Then they give you a card and they say, how much credit line should we give you? Because it's an unsecured line, right? So it makes a difference whether I give you $500 or whether I give you $1,000 or $10,000. You could fill the same application. Somebody gets $10,000, you get $200. And you with the $200 will get charged more interest than the person who gets $10,000. Again, it comes with just a simple concept of trust. If a student comes in and they apply for a card, they usually get $500 and they get 30% APR. With a rich person, rich people don't pay interest. So we have something called a nominal interest, which is we just put an interest out there because we can't say zero because they're never going to pay. Right? Their effective rate that they pay us, which is what people actually pay versus what you tell them to pay, is zero. So I want to give them more line. I want to open that line up as much as I can because I'm trying to have that balance stick, right? I want that balance to stay. But if the balance every month is going to zero, then I'm concerned. I want to keep opening up the line. Maybe if I give them $10,000, they're going to finally buy that thing and not be able to pay it off. And then I give them 10 and they pay it off. I'm like, maybe I should try 20. And we keep doing it like that. I have people that have like $1 million in line. They never carry a balance. Finally, you call them up and like, okay, how many credit cards do you have? Because I need you to use this one. That's the game. So what ends up happening is I have to charge the interest from the person who perhaps shouldn't be paying it. I have to take that money from them so I could give this other person airline miles. I could encourage them to keep using my product. Because our law says you have to give everybody the opportunity. So ideally I would have preferred to give the rich person and not the poor person, but I can't get away with that. So I've got to give everybody, but I've got to take the value from here to be able to give to this other guy. And then only when I've given some value, then I could get some for myself. So the system is not difficult. It's actually pretty straightforward. And I always get people that will say, isn't that unfair? Isn't it unfair that you're charging this person who shouldn't be paying? Well, it's not based on the fact that I don't trust them. That's why if you ask a bank, they will tell you, I'd rely on this score. All I do is I rely on this score. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but the score is most of the reason how they determine this thing, right? But I get this all the time. People challenge and say, look, why is such an unfair system? This guy is rich. He could pay. He's always cycling through his balance. Why don't you charge him the interest rate? This guy is not rich. I trust that guy. I don't trust this guy. So I'm locking my car, right? So once you understand that, it translates into any loan product you get from a financial institution, any of them. It does not matter the product. It all is the same concept. The less trustworthy you are, and companies have FICO scores too. They have done some backstreet numbers. They have if it's an individual that opened the company, their FICO translates into the company's FICO. It's the same thing. If you're a company and you haven't demonstrated that you've had enough receivables and you service enough of your debt, you go into the bank. I used to own my own company. I opened my company at the height of the financial crisis. You tell me walk into a bank to try to get a loan, I could have sold my mom, they would have taken my mom and still kicked me out. There was no way they could have given me money. And if they ever gave me money, they would give me at such an interest rate that it would be so prohibitive for my own growth. Right? So the takeaway for this is treat your FICO for any debt. Okay? Student loans are a little bit of an exception because you could get subsidized debt from which is a debt that's just backed by the federal government. And it says if you don't pay, the federal government is going to pay. And the reason for that is, the reason we do that for that kind of loan is because a lot of people who need the student loan are people who ordinarily would not qualify for any other kind of loan. So for the government had to step in to create a socialist program to say we want at least a certain amount of people to go to college. Because if the government did not back that loan, no bank would issue it. Okay? So what you do in that scenario, as I mentioned before, the people who take seriously the concept of financial literacy, that start to focus on building their FICO score when they're young, when you get to that level where you actually need a loan as an 18, 19-year-old, you could have other options if you have better FICO that are cheaper than a student loan. It's just a price. A loan is a price. Somebody's charging you to give you something. And if you're a student, I charge you more. Right? I'm sorry? You pay cash. Unfortunately, we don't live in a system where a lot of people have a lot of cash lying around. So if you understand the concept of debt, you understand the concept of your profile, your credit worthiness, and all of that. What I'm most interested in is in the concept of how do you make money, right? Most people in our system don't have a lot of money. We've lived in a system where for the last 30 to 40 years, incomes have stayed flat. That means if you left a job and you moved into a different job, most people have actually earned the same money. They haven't. Before that, people earned a little bit more than money. There are reasons for why that's happened. I could touch a little bit into the concept that you asked me brought in the economy. But incomes have stayed flat. Well, we've been consuming a lot more. We have more debt on the books now than we've ever had. So if incomes have stayed flat, debt has gone up, that's a very simple math, right? It means disposable income or whatever else people have to save has actually gone down. So we're seeing historically low savings rate. In fact, in the Western world, savings rates are very, very low, which is the percent of money that you earn that you actually save for yourself. Okay? So now let's talk about how do you make money? And I'm going to need help on this stuff. Let's this is the value I want to leave, and then I'll touch on the remaining topics. There is this concept called compounding. Who's heard of this? Okay. I think of anything in life. My kids would probably just, they hear the word compounding from me all the time. Because I feel everything in life is about compounding. Okay? If I behave well enough consistently, it adds up. At the end of the day, you're going to say, this guy's a good guy, he's well behaved. It's not because I behaved once very well. It's not because I behaved twice, just because over time I behaved consistently better than I did not. The same concept works for money. Okay, so we're going to play a very simple game. I'm going to ask you guys just a simple question. So we have kids in the room. If I have saved $100 every month for 40 years with the concept of compounding, $100. If I'm 20 years old, 40 years puts me at 60. If I just save $100 every month for 40 years, how much money do you think I would make?
Including interest or just?
Well, if you're not getting interest, hopefully somehow in those 40 years, somebody loved you enough to actually talk to you.
You just have your capital that's built up.
Right. So 48,000? Okay. Well, let's do the math and let's figure out. So go to, I think you could scroll to the, it's easier to get to the bottom. All the way down. Yep, and just click on the go to calculator over there. So to make money in our system, it is all about discipline and consistency. That's it. You don't have to be a financial professional. You don't have to pay anybody. You don't have to know the best concepts of finance in the world. You don't have to be watching CNBC. You just have to be two things. You have to be disciplined and you have to be consistent. And we're going to prove it now. So this is somebody who's a teenager. So you have a teenage kid and you want to teach them how to be disciplined and to be consistent, right? So you give them $100. So we're going to do $100, which is grandma gave them for Christmas, okay? But then you're going to sit them down and say, going forward, every month I'm going to make sure that we save $100 from you. Whatever you do, cut the lawn or whatever, we're going to save $100. So they do $100, and let's go with the easy scenario. Let's say 40 years, which is 40. And so again, we're going to keep this simple, right? So if they were to go out to fidelity.com or any remember, this is free investment. So let's say they were to go out anywhere and buy just what we call an index fund, which returns at a market rate of, historically is returned at a market rate of 11. So could you do 11? Yep. And let's say that is the average. So let's put, in the next column, just put 5, which is, we think on some bad years it's going to do 7, and on some really good years it's going to do 16. Just let me give you guys perspective. Since 2008 crash, the market has actually done 15% on average. So if you had $1,000 since 2008, compounded by now, that money would be significantly more than that. So let's calculate that. So this is what happens with the impact of compounding, right? So if you could you please scroll to the top for a little bit? Just on the top of this chart. No, yeah. So $100 consistently put away for 40 years gives you $704,000, right? So this is somebody who has a lot of time. This is for a teenager. That all you're teaching is you got to be consistent. That means you do it all the time. And you got to be disciplined. That means you do it. Right? So every month, before you have a conversation with your kid, you say, did you put the $100 away? This is all they're doing. If at any point, so could you please go back to the calculator? And let's start playing with this for a second. Let's assume that at some point, you know, after 10 years of you teaching your kid this, and your kid is like, I got this. Let's do $200 instead of $100. So 100 is what, $1,100 a year. Let's do 200 and let's see what happens. So go back and just click calculate. So this is a kid that said, yep, I really love what my parents were teaching me, so I'm going to do that instead. Yes?
Can we go back and change the interest rate to a U.S. government bond rate, which is actually, considered much more stable?
Right.
Because there's a lot of problems with using the stock market as your as a guarantee.
I don't think so. I think.
Huge problems with that.
What do you mean by huge problems with that?
It's because then you start to deal with timing, and if you're invested, continually over the entire period, fine.
Right.
If you're ever changing anything there, or
right.
if you tend to invest higher dollar amounts during bear markets,
right.
Or if you're investing, at a peak, of a bull, and then you tend to lose after that. It's not as
Right. So I get your point. This is why we're using 40 years. Now, so you're right. The market is all about timing, right? If I am older, if you're older, nobody's going to tell you to do an index strategy, right? If I'm younger, I don't think it makes any sense to be telling anybody to put money in bonds. Over the 100-year life of the market is returned 11.
But a bond would actually give you a guaranteed
Right.
rate, which would be a little more realistic
Right.
than this.
I don't think so. So I am in my 40s. I don't even invest in bonds. Okay, when you're talking a guaranteed 3%, I'm in my 40s. If I was managing my mother's portfolio, sure, the bonds and annuities that I would put in there, but I am a little too young for it to be doing a bond strategy. That's just me. I'm risk adverse, right? That's what I mean. I like risk. So that's why when you sit down, this what I'm telling you is more generic. This is if I'm telling a kid in this room, this is exactly what I would do. If I am telling somebody who's much older, then I would sit down with them to figure out what the risk tolerance is and figure out when your investment is not something that you shouldn't be listening to. Depending on your circumstance, you don't want to be putting your money because of how you feel. You got to look at your own circumstances and then figure out how you manage your money. But if you're less than 45 years old, I don't think bond strategy is anything I would recommend.
But I was just saying, just to do it to get a perspective of something that would be if you didn't want to take on what I consider to be a lot of risk, you are not guaranteed this amount.
It's not a lot of risk. This you're talking about S&P, which is the most diversified big. I don't want to divert the conversation, but I think I don't agree with that. So, but if it's working for you, I would recommend you do it.
Because I'm invested in stocks.
Right. This is not stocks. This is not stocks.
Okay, index. Yeah. It is, but I mean, there are problems with doing that. But okay.
There are problems with every investment.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying.
In the system we have.
Using a government bond is the closest thing you can get to guaranteed.
Yes. And what do you mean when in the concept of investing, when you talk about guarantee, what does that mean?
That you will get what you think you're going to get.
So what does that mean in terms of income that you make? What does it mean?
Well,
whenever you could guarantee.
Well, definitely, if you change that 11%
right.
to 3%,
right.
you're not going to be getting any $1 million.
So then why would you go for 3?
What I'm saying is because you're not guaranteed to get this number either.
Okay. So for everybody else, whenever you hear the concept, when somebody says, I could guarantee something, first of all, run. Second of all, the reason the U.S. government bonds pay so low is that the U.S. government is the most trusted government in the world, okay? So whenever you hear guarantee, it means the payout of a U.S. government bond is very low. So what we do in that strategy is, if you're older, you're getting ready to retire, you can't take risk, okay? So we would say, you don't have the time to have your money fluctuate in the market. But if you're younger, you would not find, if an advisor is out there is telling somebody young that they should be buying U.S. government bonds, hopefully it's not my family or my friend. It's a bad idea. Okay, I get the guarantee. I don't want to get tied over that. I get the guarantee. It's not what I'm about.
Well, but chances are you're not going to be able to do very much when you're investing very little. Mm-hmm. And just that risk that you're talking about that you don't want to have when you are older, that can still affect you throughout the course of your, and you don't know that, and it increases the amount of risk that you're going to have at any particular point. If you need your money at any point in time,
you should not be in the market.
Okay.
So here's the thing.
That's fine.
If you're somebody who does not, so when we're done with this is, I would not recommend when I'm gone here, you take your money and go do this. I started by saying you cannot be carrying debt, okay? You have to make sure that you're investing in your kids, 401, 529 and all that stuff. I think Dave Ramsey has something he calls the 7 steps of basic investing. This is number 4 or 5. The first 3, you got to service your debt. Okay? When you're here, you're not, if what's going to happen is the market is going to go, the first year Trump came in, the market did minus 4%. If you pulled out your money then, you should not have been in the market. The next year, the market did 32%. The next year, which is this year, or I think it was last year, the market did 33%. This year, the market so far, I think, is 2% or so this month.
People have been talking about a bubble.
Well, that's why it's gambling.
Yeah.
Okay, but I don't want to. I think there are other people, but I don't. That's not a strategy. If you're doing it and it works for you, go for it. It's not what I would recommend. So the reason we do this scenario is that we look at the history of the stock market since the 1920s. Okay, so if you just walked up to, and I do this with my kids. If you just go onto Fidelity.com or Charles Schwab, any of them, and you were to look for an S&P 500 index fund, right? So let me give you guys perspective. So Warren Buffett is the most, you guys know Warren Buffett, right? All right. For the past 20 years, he's had a bet. And he says, if anybody out there, people like me who spend day in, day out, focusing on the market, if you could take what we call an actively managed fund, so you take a fund that you have to trade in every day. If you could beat the 11% return on the market consistently for 3 years, he would give you $5 million, no questions asked. He's had that bet for 20 years. How many times do you guys think somebody's won it? For 20 years, he's challenged the entire US system. He said, if anybody out there could beat this thing that I just showed you guys, he would give them $5 million, no questions asked. How many people do you think have beat that? Nobody. What I'm showing you guys, I do this for my family, okay? So it's for so long as we've had a stock market, it's performed this way. Now, what you're saying is true, is that what 11% is up and down over a period of time. So in 2008, the market lost about 40% of value. Yes?
But just as you're talking about using the statistics from the 1920s until today,
right.
Okay, you're using the long-term average. People don't live that long, and when you take your 40-year average and you place that 40-year time frame anywhere within from 1920 until today, and move it around at different times, you get wildly different returns.
Yeah, this is what I do for a living. I'm struggling to understand what you're trying to say. What are you saying? So yes, if I could take the last 8 years, the last 15 years, I mentioned in here, right? It's actually done higher than this. So you are right that if you pick arbitrary periods within the time frame, investing is not so you could cash in next year. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is to have a disciplined strategy that lasts over very long periods of time. If you're dealing with 10 plus years, you have to be one of the most unlucky people that's ever lived to pick the worst 10 years of the market and invest in. It's happened.
But that's what generally happens, especially to individual investors. They're constantly making the wrong decisions.
Does that happen to you?
It happens across the board. Look at any behavioral investing books. I mean,
yeah, but you're misconstruing the point. The reason we recommend, actually, let me prove this point to you. Yeah, I get it. I want to show you something so you don't. I don't want you to do a disservice to people because it's not a good thing. Could you just bring up a browser? I want to show you why. So type in the word SPIVA, S-P-I-V-A. So we do this for a living, okay? I get what you're saying. I guarantee you, I do this for a living. What you're saying is not true. So do the first website, yeah, the first one. So in this thing, scroll, yeah, click on that, yeah. Click on this, yeah. All right. So all of this are all the markets around the world. Okay. I just want to show you. Please don't walk away with that idea. And what this tells you is, if you had done what I just showed you to do, right? No fees. You didn't pay anybody to do it. You would outperform in a 1-year period. This is a year when the market has been really, really good. You in the US, you would outperform 70% of all actively traded funds in the entire market. Okay? In a 5-year period, so 8 out of 10. So by you sitting on your couch and doing this, you outperform 8 out of 10 of all the investments that you see out there, just by doing this. This is a diversified strategy. You don't have to do the diversification. It's risk-free. You don't have to pay any fees. You just have, I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I don't want to take up more time.
Okay. You don't have to pay any fees. If you're paying fees, somebody's ripping you off. You don't have to pay any fees. You just have to do this. And I think so this, we do all of this. The reason I'm showing you guys a lot of the data is because of some of the stuff. I don't want you to leave that impression with people because it's not a good one. But what ends up happening is most people don't do this because there are a number of reasons why. One way people access the stock market is through their employers, right? So a lot of us have 401ks, right? How many people have 401ks through their job? All right, I'm gonna put you on the spot. How much are you paying to get your 401k manager at work? Do you know?
The employers pay, right?
No, you pay.
You match it, usually.
No, it's not match. We're talking about fees now. You pay.
I don't know what the rate is.
Go check it. Your employer has contracted with somebody to run it. What they did is they're just paying. You're paying a third party. They've negotiated your fee, so it's low, but you're paying. Do you know what you're investing in your 401k?
They had a plan where you just get what you're going to retire.
Right.
They put it in that fund.
Okay, so you got the targeted funds though, right? Okay. Okay. Do you know if they offer more options than just your targeted funds? They do? Okay. That's typical. I'm using that to illustrate that's typically how 401k works. In your targeted funds, the reason you have targeted is just they have more of what he was talking about in the targeted funds. If your retirement is more out there. So, right. So you're more risk adverse. There's going to be a lot of bonds in there, but your return is going to be low. And then they're just going to, that's essentially what it is. If you want to be more aggressive, you would say, usually employers would say, you could manage it yourself, which scares the crap out of people. They're like, I don't want to touch this. But they would offer, by law, they have to offer you more options in there. You could do it yourself. I don't like fees, so I tend to manage my own stuff myself because I don't like fees. But even with that, a lot of employers will give you tools with I don't know what companies, Citi uses a company called iLight. So even with that, they would offer you some help in terms of how to balance your portfolio. But what you don't want to do in investing is you don't want to pay fees. So fees is like an interest rate that we were talking about earlier. You get charged consistently for somebody to manage your money when I know that 80% of them would perform less than the strategy I showed you guys earlier, right? So it's very intuitive for me, but it baffles me every day why people will go and haggle for something in like a Walmart or something, right? But they would pay somebody to give them less value than they could get it themselves. I get it. The industry, we've made the thing seem so complicated that if somebody is looking at a bunch of screen and a bunch of numbers, they're like, I have to be so smart in order to be able to do this, right? And the goal is you don't have to be that smart. And by the way, it's worse in a bunch of different countries. Could you please help me go to the top and click on Canada. So in Canada, think about it. If you had an investment in a 3-year period, almost 100% of the people you paid money to underperform something you could do yourself. Think about how interesting that idea is, right? You walked up to somebody and you paid them money to give you something, and they give you less value than you would have done yourself. And you have billions of dollars pouring into this stuff. Billions of dollars every single day. Because we think it's very mystified. We think you have to be so complicated to answer all of this. You don't have to be. Since 1920s, when we had the market, we've had 2008 was the second worst time in the market's lifetime. The market took 10 years to recover from 2008. The worst crisis in our lifetime, we recovered from it in 10 years. And by today, if you had left the same amount of money, it fell 60%. By today, that same amount of money would have probably doubled or tripled. That's the best we know how to manage money. Everything else, this is it. And you could go there, you could look at the market in all these countries. The US is the best. And even in the US, in a 5-year period, you could go to fidelity.com and buy what they call a no-load index fund, which is a no-fee fund. You don't have to pay fees. And you would outperform 80% of people doing that. Okay? I'm sorry? So it's a no-load fund. So let me show you how you would do it. You want to see how you do it? Okay. So could you please, since we're all doing hands-on training here, this is how you would do it. I don't work for Fidelity, okay? But I'm going to show most people's retirement money is in Fidelity. So could you just go to the browser and just go to fidelity.com? So this is how you would research it, and this is how you would buy anything if you wanted to do it. But we're going to see the results ourselves, and we'll see what I'm talking about. So could you go to news and research? This is it's a Fidelity. It's a company I do not work for. I'm not recommending investment. I'm just showing you how this stuff works. So let's do mutual funds. Mutual funds are diversified. Okay, they're not stocks. So let's do just do see results. Yep. So I am cheap. I like to buy. I just talked about fees, right? I don't want to pay fees. Most of the stuff you see here are the things that fall in that 80% category. Those are the things that you have to go pay somebody to manage it for you. So index means we're going to buy something which tracks the way the market works, but you're not paying anybody to do it. So so there's a button here, it says index. If you could just click on that. So it's going to narrow, no, all the way, yeah, right here. All right, so it's going to narrow all of this to just a handful of them. So you guys who hear every day, you wake up on TV, they say the S&P 500 did X, right? The NASDAQ did Y, or the Dow did this. So let's say you wanted to feel good. Every day you wake up and you see on CNBC, it says the market did 2%. You're like, how am I connected to that? Like, what is that? That's why you hear the people on CNN, they'll say, oh, people should feel this way about the market. Most people like, I don't know how to relate that to what I have, right? So what a lot of these investment houses have done, they've built indexes that reflect exactly that. So you would see in the names, Vanguard has it, Fidelity has it, they all have it. So this fund here is designed to track the 500 largest companies in America. Microsoft, Apple, all of those companies, if you click on it, you see all the companies that are invested in it. So let's walk through the numbers. So far, year to date, this fund has done 3.59%, okay? In 1 year, so in a 12-month period, this fund did 21.67%. In a 3-year period, the fund has done 14.52%. But I meant in a 10-year period, the fund has done 13.96%. That means 10 years means there were years when it was down and there were years when it was up. But if you look at a 10-year period, this is the part that I like the most, guys. When it comes down to how much are you paying to get this 13%, you're essentially paying, in our industry, you're essentially paying nothing. Okay? You're paying 0.015% to get the 13 or 14% that you're getting every year. The other way to look at some of this stuff is there's an independent company based in Chicago called Morningstar, which rates every fund in the US and abroad. So a lot of these companies buy the Morningstar rating just to show you, and you could go into Morningstar yourself, type in the symbol, read a little bit about how they came in with that 5 stars or the best stars. That means that's a very good fund, okay? So the strategy that I talked about with the $100, you could take your kid tomorrow to Fidelity and tell them you want $100 into this fund. Actually, could you click into the thing, please? All right, so there's a lot of information here. It tells you what you're paying. It gives you minimum to invest. Large blend means these are the biggest companies in the US. When the fund started, it's been around since the 1980s. The net asset, it has $236 billion in it. Net asset value, you have a lot of stuff here that people like me pay attention to. It's cheap at 90, the cheapest it's been is $94 per share. And when you buy, let's say you're buying at $100, they're not going to sell you a share. They'll sell you parts of the share. That's what happens. And you could see the performance. So what this tells you is, if you had just gone in, so this is a 10-year period, right? If you had just gone in and bought a large blend stock, so the one again that I tell you, you had to pay fees to, those guys are performing 80% under the market, right? That's this line here. So if you went in and you bought this fund, you would return $9,600, and you would, on this amount of money, we talked about fees, you could easily be paying 2-3% of fees, right? Versus where you're returning, the market itself returned 96.83, and if you had bought that fund from Fidelity, the same time period, you'd have gotten 96.82. Remember, one of them on the board has 0 fees, right? While the other ones have fees. Again, I'll tell you guys, in my industry, run away from fees as much as possible. Because as you could tell, they're charging you to give you the same amount of money that you could get on your own. Okay? So this is, and there's a lot more detail here again, which you don't really have to know unless you want to. You could look at what companies are invested in this fund. So this is, again, think about this as the largest companies in the US, 500 of them. Okay, so that's who you're seeing there. The Apples, the Microsoft, Amazon, and all of that. Now, what happens if you just go to Amazon and just go to your bank and buy an Amazon share? What happens? You could do that, right? You could do that. A lot of people did. When Amazon was like $200, I have friends that did it. It's trading, I think last time I checked, the thing was trading like $2,200 or something. Unfortunately, the chances of you doing that is almost as equal to lightning striking you. Very few people saw into Amazon going from $200 to $2,000. Very few people. And most people that tell you they did, they're lying to you. Very few people saw Netflix going from where it was to where it is today. The US stock market has hundreds of thousands of companies. Yes?
Would you apply this method for like cryptocurrency as well?
No.
I know like most people probably not going to get it.
Crypto is a hairy area that I would leave alone. I would just leave that. We leave it alone. And we don't like to leave money on the table. So the best strategy for the average American is to go get yourself an index fund. Stay disciplined on it. Just keep putting your money in it. Yes?
But even this, I mean, so your 10 years, you are excluding the 2008 crash, okay, which would have dragged you
Right.
But you're not including any expense ratio at all, even the 1/15 thousandth of a percent, and you're not including the rebalancing of the index, the taxes you paid, which would affect your real return.
Right.
On that.
Right. The only thing I agree with what you just said is the last thing you said. The taxes you paid, and I touched on that earlier today. Your taxes and your fees and your inflation are the things that I started with on this conversation. Now, I happen to be a little bit more sophisticated as an investor, so there are investment strategies out there that are what we call tax minimization strategy. So what it would do is it would trade a lot during the day. So I could still maintain this overall strategy, but I'm trading my losses consistently. And the way the system is built is I could offset those losses against but you're getting the average investor, a lot of those investments at these institutions, you need a minimum that most people can't get into. So there's no reason for me to come to a big room like this and have that conversation that's more that's sophisticated. You get it? But if I'm just having a conversation about
even with an index fund, every time the index changes, and so Apple is no longer the largest company in America.
Right.
It falls off of the index.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. S&P is a very simple index. It's 500 biggest American companies.
Yeah, okay, so
right.
Apple isn't going to fall that far necessarily, right. But I mean, there are companies on there that it does rebalance.
Right.
Okay, and so every time that happens, though, you are paying capital gains taxes and you are paying...
What is the capital gains tax versus income tax?
What's that?
What's the rate of the capital gains versus the income tax?
Well, lower than 10%.
So then why are you having that conversation?
It still changes the real return that you end up getting.
Sure.
Which is it's still lower than even that 13% that they're saying, and that is again excluding
sure.
The major market crash.
I get it. So let's say it went from 13 to 10. That's huge. Tell me what you got out there to put your money in that will get you 10.
Again, I mean, there's always opportunity.
Tell me. You're the one that's challenging the stuff. Tell me what you got out there that you put your money in that will get you 10.
Depending on where the market is in different things, certain kinds of investments tend to...
You got to keep it simple, man. You got to keep it simple. You're complicating it. So, yes, you are complicating it. Don't do that. Yes, ma'am.
So I just want to try to understand this. You have stocks.
Right.
You have bonds.
Right.
You have index funds.
Right.
What is this one, mutual fund?
This is mutual fund. So if you're an average investor, right, we also call stocks in our business, we refer to it as equities. If you're an average person, that means you have, I would say, less than $500,000 in asset, you should not be investing in equities. When you talk about gambling earlier, you asked the question. Equities is the purest form of gambling that we have in the stock market.
So equities?
That means you're buying a stock. You're looking at a company on the street and you say, I want their stock. That is the purest form of gambling that we have, and I would not recommend that unless you have a ton of money. Don't look at Amazon, don't look at Netflix, don't look at Microsoft. Don't look at any of that stuff and say, I want to buy that. That's not a good strategy. Mutual fund is they're all weighted. So the market, we call the S&P as a price-weighted index. So we take the price, we multiply it over stocks outstanding, and it gives you the asset value that they just mentioned. What they're doing there is they're taking, I was going to show him another. Could you please go to this website, FINVIS, and I'll show you what's happening.
Before you do that,
yeah, FIN, yeah, yes.
I was going to ask for you to explain each one of those.
Yes, I'll show you.
Varied in which ones are safe. I remember when I was in school,
right.
They would have us read financial statements.
Right.
And to me, it was like guessing.
Right.
Like doing the math, like I'm not.
You don't. This is why. Please, don't do that. Let people like me do that. You don't have. If you're investing in a stock, yes, you're going to have to be digging a lot into their financial statements, understanding how they're managing capital, understanding how they're managing investment, the debt to income. You're going to have to know all of that. Why put yourself through that? Get an index fund, and so FINVIZ, V as in Victor, .com. So I am oversimplifying how the index works, but could you click on the heat map? It's a little bit more sophisticated than that. We don't just take the 500 funds, put them in a pot. We manage things by sector, by industry, and all of that stuff. So this is where the whole concept of so the market did poorly on Friday. So for that, what it means is if you have a lot of money, the market was on sale on Friday, you should be buying. That's what that means. All right, so let's just click on this heat map. It should open up. All right, so this is the market. This is what happened on Friday. It was a bloodbath. Yes. If you were the kind of person that needed money out, this you don't want to be looking at this, okay? So this is the way it's managed. So these are your 500 large companies in the US. The way this works is each of these blocks represents an industry sector. So this is the sector that I'm in. So you've got financial services. You've got JP Morgan, JP Morgan is the largest consumer bank in the US. They have the most assets, about $2 trillion. So they occupy more space within the asset because the way this index is designed so the company that has bigger value within that sector has more impact, right? So JP Morgan has more money, so they would have more impact. This is Bank of America. This is Citibank that I work at, PNC, and you can see sometimes some of the banks, they're not as big. You could go to FDIC. It gets more complicated. You could go to FDIC and look at their deposits in their balance sheet and find out all this information. But you don't have to. Somebody else is doing the work for you. But you could look at that 500 thing. So if you want to look at the breakdown of the 500 things within the system, you could do this. This is what I do. All you have to do is go put your $100 or $200. It does all of this work for you. You don't have to look at any of this stuff. Okay? That's how it works. Now, this is a one-day performance. Could you click on this thing? So on any given day, it looks that bad. Let's just do last 6 months and see what happens. So in the last 6 months, Google in 6 months jumped 24%. What are the chances, again, giving your thing a timing? For you to get the 24%, that means you must have gotten on the first day of the 6 months and then cash out on the last day of the 6 months, right? Nobody is that good. So none of us plays the market that way. So Microsoft did 27%, 28, 29% in a span of 6 months, right? Exxon, if you were bought into Exxon, so we talk about equities, why I would not recommend it. Somebody must have been watching the news and then somebody says, oh, there's going to be war in the Middle East, buy Exxon. If you bought Exxon, you lost 15% of your money, right? But if you bought the market, Exxon may have been down. Who cares? At the same time, Google was up. Microsoft was up. That's that diversification that balances everything out. Over time, it does not matter what sector is up or down. Look at it. Doesn't matter. You have sectors at the same time that Microsoft is doing this. You've got people here that are losing 10%. AIG Insurance is losing money. GM has been falling off the cliff lately, right? You've got Merck Pharmaceuticals. While Johnson & Johnson is doing well, perhaps Merck is not coming up with new stuff. So they're going down. McDonald's, I don't know what's going on with them. They're going down. But what do you care? Other people are going up. This is the genius of the design of what we got. It doesn't matter. There are sectors in here that are building sectors. I don't know where Home Depot is. So you've got So you got cigarettes, Philip Morris, and I don't know who these people are.
So you get the same thing even if you buy your own stocks, and the more stocks you buy, you get the same.
No, you don't.
Yeah, you get diversification.
You don't.
But you get to a certain number.
Oh, what? Could you say that again?
Stocks, then
That's why you don't give that kind of advice. It's very bad advice.
it's the same
Don't
thing.
tell people on the street to go out and buy individual stocks and diversify their own portfolio. Don't do that.
It ends up being the same.
No, it's not.
Because what does that mean?
It does not, sir.
Why would you say that?
How not? How can it not?
No, it's different, because the way that mutual funds are put together, they're designed to, with very complex formulas.
Sure, I understand the weighting.
Which an individual investor cannot do. There's no way for an individual investor to make that kind of calculation to get.
Yeah, but I think the reason he's also doing a disservice is that there's a lot about what it takes to manage the individual company. Like if you're building your own portfolio, I have to be investing so much time to manage each of these companies individually and rebalancing this stuff on a daily basis. Why would you tell a human being to go do that?
I'm not saying to do it.
Then why would you bring it up? No, it's not. It's not. Stop it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Please don't do it. Tell that to somebody else. I'm here to try to help people out. That's not advice. That's good.
Just trying to understand it, because rather than me, what if something does fall off? Like you, pretty sure McDonald's pretty big, but
Right.
within one of the smaller blocks, do they just replace it with something else if it falls off?
Yes, that it happens. What he was saying, it happens a lot. When WorldCom went out, the 500 big companies, right? So Wall Street is an institution in New York. They've got PhDs there, like 1 million of them, working to do that. There's a process when something falls off, what goes on. It does not impact, this thing has been in existence since it was created. It doesn't impact the overall performance of the index because of the reason, because of how they replace things in and out. Right, so it's not the individual investor, I guarantee you, can't do it. I'm more sophisticated than the average investor. I would not be doing this. Yes.
I might add one thing. I'm also in the financial services arena, and we get a chance to attend various seminars and workshops. And the fund managers, the people who put these combinations together, mutual funds, there is a tremendous amount of research that's done on every single piece of that pie. And they put a tremendous amount of time, and I attended one recently where for many years this particular fund manager in the group, they even did not invest in Apple because they were so concerned about the trend in Apple. Even though it's a really big company and it's really done well for the most part, they were so careful as to avoid making that decision to include it in this mix of funds.
Right.
Until a certain point in time, and they said it's starting to look attractive now, and they were watching it carefully. And so there's no way that the averages, the combinations you can lose, but it's just so minuscule a chance.
Right, and again, this strategy is what we call an index strategy, okay? I will not show up here and tell you to go buy something where you're gonna spend money in. I'm telling you, I am cheaper than all of you in this room. I like to do things that don't cost me money, okay? If I were going off with my kids' 529 plan and wanting to invest, I do index. For the reasons that I've just mentioned to you guys, all of the benefits of the diversification, tracking, the big, if think about it this way, if you woke up tomorrow and the 500 biggest companies in America are all going belly up, you should go to get a gun because the world is practically ended. Okay? So what you're doing here, you're getting a lot of benefits of diversification, you're getting a lot of benefits of tracking multiple industries, multiple sectors. You're buying into all of this stuff for free. Now, he is right when he says you're going to have to pay taxes on this. He is right. What is not true is you will pay tax, but the tax you're paying is what you see in politics today. If you're watching the debates, you get politicians saying we're taxing income different from we're taxing capital. We're taxing income. What they're using is coded language to describe you what's happening here. When I make money off of this, I'm being taxed at 15%, which is the lowest we tax in our system. We're taxing capital. But if you go to your job and you get a W-2, you're at least getting taxed at a 22%. It's the same dollar. Why would I not make money and get taxed cheaper? I don't get it, right? These are the kind of things that are too complicated for me to get. So this is simple. Now, this thing could get overly complex. And I assure you, if you want to get there, I could take you there. It's not needed. I just showed you guys the result of, if you did this yourself, you would be outperforming people that have yachts and mansions. All the stuff that you take your money and give them so they could buy those things, you could take it and invest in yourself and your family.
Doing what, by the way? Yeah. Investing in stocks, investing in...
Not stocks.
Which ones?
Investing in an index fund. Actually, I would add investing in a no-load index fund, which is exactly the way we got to this point.
Index funds are what compared to...
Index fund, right? So we have markets. Indexes, think about an index as something you design to track something else. So an index fund is something somebody says, I'm going to see this horse run like this. I'm going to get my own horse. I'm going to breed a hybrid horse to run exactly the way that horse runs. So there are multiple of them that every market has an index that it tracks. This one I just showed you guys specifically tracks S&P 500, which is our biggest fund. Now, before you came here, there's another one that tracks the NASDAQ. If I believe technology, NASDAQ just tracks technology companies. So there are a lot of people who did not see Tesla. Tesla went from $12 to $900. I guarantee you, none of us in this room saw that. I guarantee you 99% of people didn't see that. But if you invested in the NASDAQ, you benefited from that without even doing anything. So you could track NASDAQ, you could track S&P 500, or you could go buy something called the Total Market Index Fund. If you believe that the U.S. stock market is going to get better, which it has, you could just buy a total market fund. If the market does well, if America does well, you do well. Costs you nothing.
So, another question. What's the difference between index and mutual fund?
Right. The difference is, on the mutual fund, which is what when we started, I showed you a website that's, not when we started, before I started this topic, showed you a website when I said 80% of the funds have underperformed the index. So if you just go out, so like he was saying, I could wake up tomorrow and say, I'm going to build my own fund, and I do what he was saying. I pick a bunch of individual stocks and I put them in a group. That's exactly how it happens. 80% of the time, they can't beat this thing. I'm going to charge you fees because I'm going to tell you, I have to watch it every day. I have to read all the financial statements. I have to have some people in my office look at all that stuff. I have to go on the internet. So I'm going to charge you some money to do all of that. And you're going to come in and say, okay, I'll buy into that. There are days when I will outperform this. It happens. There are a lot of days I would outperform this. But in statistics, that's not how we look at it. We look at it and say, over long periods of time, are you going to outperform this? It doesn't even happen 2 years in a row. In our system, it doesn't happen. That's what Warren Buffett has put money on. So there will be years when, if I pick my own things, I would outperform this. It's possible. I will pick the Apple. I will pick the Microsoft that comes out and does something that's unusual. But you better be hoping that you get into that one.
So,
yeah.
So index is better than mutual.
Index is a mutual fund.
Index is a mutual.
Yes.
Mutual is much better.
Mutual fund for the average investor is better. For one key reason is that you're diversified. So as I just mentioned there, you could take $500 and invest in every sector that matters in the economy. That's simple, right? If you went out there to go buy, to diversify yourself, you can't even do that. Microsoft in itself, Google, I think right now is $2,000, right? And you would just be one part of a sector with $2,000 of risk. Don't do that. Now, if you're Warren Buffett, you could do that. He's got $1 billion or 60 billion to play with, but not me, right? So, when you go on the internet, right, all of this data is out there. I could spend days with you to go through all of this stuff. There's a lot of comparisons. I do this with my kids. And my kids are young, so you can imagine I'm probably not being hailed as the father of the year because I spend a lot of time like this with my kids. But you could go in and look at a lot of comparisons with other funds, compare that to, like in this one chart, they're comparing. So when you say mutual fund, I would assume that you could put money into, so they're calling this large blend. You could put money into this large blend fund, which is just a regular mutual fund. The difference between the two is that on one, you're going to pay a significantly higher fee, right? So again, it becomes, think about it as you're going to a grocery store to go buy something. Would you pay, it's almost like you're paying to shop there. Would you pay to do it when you know you could shop here practically for free and get the item at the same price? Probably not. That's what's happening here. It's the same concept. It's just here we're using things that are imaginary. In finance, you can't touch these things, right? So it's imaginary. You're not thinking of them as stuff. But I always think of these things as stuff that you have to spend money on. Yes, ma'am.
So what you're trying to say is it's okay to go open up, like with Charles Schwab,
right,
like an investing.
Right.
It's better doing it with Charles Schwab than doing it with your W-2. I mean, with your 401k.
No, you should. I didn't touch on 401k here.
With your you know how when you go outside the job, they give you a retirement.
Right.
So it's better.
Right. That's your 401k. No, those are different. You have to invest in like there are 10 buckets of things I would recommend. He had asked me, I was going to get to that on what I put my money in. 401k, when you get to your job, that's the first money you should, the first day, you should be negotiating your job. Make sure they have a 401k. You understand how much they're going to match. 401k is a tax law. So by definition, you know what the max is. The max is $19,500 this year. But a lot of companies differ on how much money they will match. Most companies is around 7%. What you want to do, the very first thing you want to do on your job is to get to that 7%. Because when you get to 7, you get 100% of the money, right? So you want to at least get there. Depending on what investments they have, my advice is usually if you can afford it, you max out on your 19.5. Because what that does is you benefit on the investment side, but you also benefit on the tax side. By reducing your taxable income, you get the government off your money. You benefit both ways, which is huge. And then outside of that, depending again on your income, you want to do a Roth IRA or a traditional IRA. You want to be taking advantage of all this stuff that's out there that people are taking advantage of. Before you even start doing this is you stop buying all the stuff you don't want to buy, so you have a lot of excess money. Then you do this. This is like step 5, because after you've done all your work stuff, then you want to say your kid stuff. In the state of Illinois, which believe it or not, because we're a really crappy state, we have one of the best 529 plans in the country. So whenever you invest in your 529, your taxable income goes down. The state of Illinois allows a married couple $20,000 they allow you to actually benefit from $20,000 off of your taxable income, right? So it is actually, when you add this thing up, I explain this to a married couple this way. Let's assume that I was married to you and we were both working. And this is a case, forgive me, I'm going to do a lot of liberties with this. But let's say I could max out on my 401k, which is 19.5. My wife could max out on her 401k, which is 19.5. Let's assume that we both get, the math kind of works out, but let's assume that we both, on top of that, get our company to give us, they give her 12, they give me 12, okay? So you're starting the year off, just both of you guys are starting the year off with close to about $50,000, just by making that decision. You could go back to that compound interest calculator that we did before and just say, let's say I just index my 401k. My wife indexes hers, and we work this job for 10 years, both of us, or 20 years. And remember, 401k, you don't get taxed on that money. That's deferred taxes, so you get even more benefit from that. If you compounded $50,000 over 20 years of just working, this is just people, they're not doing anything special. They're not paying anybody to manage their money. They're not doing anything. They're just saying, we're just going to do the bare minimum that the law allows us to do. How much money do you think two people just working consistently at a job, taking advantage of the tax benefit that exists, how much money do you think they retire with after 20 years? Somebody just help me toss out a number.
200,000.
Try $15 million.
Okay, by doing what? I'm sorry.
All right. So, and since we're in a church, I'm going to say 10% of that goes to the church. Right? So again, these are two people, right? Two people get, our law is written this way. This is why we live in a system that punishes, tax-wise, it punishes people that are not in a relationship. I didn't write the rules, that's how the rules are. So you are together with somebody, right? And as part of your vows to be together, you say two things that I said earlier. We're going to be disciplined and we're going to be consistent. After you said we need to be religious, we need to worship and all that. The two things people need to check for in a partner is we're going to be disciplined, we're going to be consistent. Whatever happens in life, we're going to be disciplined and consistent when it comes to money, okay? So all they do then in that, so they don't do any of this stuff. They don't have enough money to do any of this. All they do is they say, we're going to max out on our 401k, right? And then we're going to index it. So they take what their employer gives them, they take what the law allows, so they benefit two ways. They get all the benefit of 401k, by the way. The reason, the other benefit of it is it has a select set of investments. So you don't have the investment that I would go to through this. Most of the time you don't have some of those investments available. They're hand-picked investments that are curated for your company. So let's say you go in and your employer, you max out. Again, the scenario I gave out was you're able, I recognize most people are not able to do that, but you're able to say, I'm going to max out on my $19,500. So I'm going to put 19.5 there. It works out to, if you could do 19.5, likely your company is going to be able to match. If you're in the income bracket where you could do that easily, your company will likely match somewhere around $12,000 of money. So they would add $12,000 more on top of your 19.5. So let's just round it up and say 20,000 plus 12 gives you 32,000, right? And then you're married to somebody that says they're also going to do the same. They do that. So you both, every year, by just being disciplined, you both have $64,000 that the government cannot even touch. There are no taxes being assessed on that. So you both put that and compound that at that rate on our original calculator that says, actually maybe we should do this so everybody could see so they know I'm not making this up. So, all right, so this is our case, right? We talked about $64,000, so we'll change the $100 to $64,000. Their monthly contribution, so each of them is doing 20,000 divided by 12 will give us what? Actually, let's do 32 divided by 12, because the employer matches 70% every month.
2.6.
No, the actual dollar amount. Okay. And then length of time, they both want to do 20 years of employment and retire. So 20. Estimated rate, we'll leave it that way. And then we compound it annually. So let's do a calculation and see what happens. No, let's scroll up. All right. So they retire with, is this just one person or is it both? One person? All right. So one person, so the couple retires with $5 million, right? All right. Do you understand how it works?
So basically, just like your employer will have already chosen their end of it. All you do is invest your 19.5
Right.
in index funds, so you don't get to choose. You just said index.
No, you could choose. So you could, when your employer, when you go to your job, first of all, everybody, when you get a job, you got to make sure you have a 401k. You have to make sure a couple of things. One of the things you have to be very savvy about is a lot of employers will try to play this trick with you. They'll say, some employers will say you have to wait 6 months before you start investing in it. Don't take that job. Negotiate that. Say, I want to start from the day I start, I want to start that day. It's a negotiable benefit. They would accept that. And then make sure that you start immediately, you do this math and just start deferring whatever you need to defer before you even get your first pay. Okay? So it should be part of the job offer to you that says we're going to match X% of your salary in this.
So this is safe.
This is safe.
This is very
if you don't take it,
gambling type thing. This is safe.
I mean, it's still gambling, but
Low risk.
it's not low risk. No, it's safe from taxes. Yeah, but if you go in there and you start picking crap that doesn't bring you money, then you're going to lose money.
So you have to know what to select.
That's why I tell you just index it. If you index it, you don't have to be thinking about anything.
What income bracket do you have to be to make that person, like 2 million? Like how much would you have to be making to take
To put 19,500?
Yeah.
It has to do with your employer, but mostly has to do with you. I know people that make $300,000 that don't have savings.
They don't have a savings account?
No. I know a lot of people that make a lot of money that don't have money. It's not I know school teachers that have retired with $10 million. They never did anything outside of just teaching and doing this. So money is not, a lot of times it's not what you make. It is correlated, but it's not, yeah. There are people people go out there and they want to keep up with the Joneses, right? There are people who, actually, I used to work for a bank that did not allow new employees to start with their 401k. Let me ask you this question. If they didn't allow you to start investing in your 401k, what % of new employees do you think started in 6 months when they did allow you to do it? If you don't do it on day one when you start the job, what % of employees do you think did that? Well, it's worse than you forget, because somebody is, let's say you make $50,000, right? Somebody says, I have $12,000 more to give you if only you would do this behavior. And people don't take it. 80% of people who don't do it on day one end up not doing it. So every year, compound it. They just let employer keep their $12,000 every year. Do you think there's an employer out there that's going to come and tap your shoulder and be like, hey, you're not taking the $12,000? Is there one employer out there that would do that? None. None. The system relies on you investing part of your $86,400 that we talked about earlier in the day, right? To actually, yes ma'am.
What happens when your employer offers you 2% convert your 401k to Roth IRA, what is the difference between that?
So they want you to roll over your 401k into their IRA.
They give you choice.
Right.
Which one is better?
She's asking between Roth.
No, the question is not at that point when you already have money. So if I understand the question correctly, you have an IRA and your employer.
Yeah, I have a 401k.
You have a 401k. Your employer has an IRA.
Now they're trying to convert if you want to convert.
Right. They always.
They're pushing you to do it.
Right. By law, they would always offer that option. First of all, let me say what you should never do. Don't ever cash that money. If you cash the money out, the system punishes you. Don't cash it. It has to move from one retirement house to another retirement house. Okay. So your employer is doing you a favor. They're saying, I want you to roll over, as I would call it, roll over that money into our plan. It's not always in your best interest because you have to look at what investments they have in their plan to make sure that they offer something that you would like to invest in. But let's say you did not want to do that. You immediately go to Fidelity or Charles Schwab or TD Ameritrade. All of those companies are set up to do exactly that. That's what they exist in business for. They will take your money. They will open an IRA for you that's also tax deferred, and then they have more investment options. So you have choices. It just depends on which one you want to take. But if your employer, let's say your employer has a very cool investment within the ones they're offering you that you like, then roll it over and they will take the money and invest it in it.
Yeah, but my question was, the Roth IRA,
What's the benefit compared to
Roth IRA and traditional IRA, they both are different, but they're similar. Individual retirement account it's another way. The government, those again have limits. Both of them have income limits, but they also have investment limits. So just like 401k has a 19,500 this year, both of those IRAs have 5,500 max IRA. The thing with investment is, I started off by saying, you want to watch out for consumer price index when you look at your money. You want to watch for fees and you want to watch for taxes. IRAs and retirement accounts, they're good because they keep the government off your money. The more money you have to invest, the more it compounds and the more money you're going to make over time. So IRAs, yes, IRAs, that's what I was coming to. IRAs are individual retirement account. The government has set that up to say, if you've done you've taken advantage of your employer stuff, you've taken advantage of all of these things, you have some excess money, then you could go put it in another retirement account that you could avoid paying me fees on. So that's what an IRA is.
So in other words, if you hit for the 401k, if you hit the 19,
right,
instead of just not putting money into anything, then
you could go open an IRA.
Roll over the 19 into the IRA.
Exactly. You could go to Fidelity and take what I just showed you and say, just open an IRA for me and I will do exactly that in it, right? Then you defer your taxes on the account. See, I'm not wasting my time here. This is good. So,
I think her question was, what happens, the employer is forcing her to move from regular IRA to the Roth IRA.
Are they doing that? Yeah. They can't do that.
Roth is kind of IRA.
Yeah, no. Yes.
I mean, it's not like they tell you have to do it, but they keep having seminars.
Right. Of course. They've signed a deal with a company. Right. Your employer has signed a deal with a company. And they've told that company that to get some minimum pricing, they're going to have employees push a number of accounts and money within the account. It's not in your best interest. I work for an employer. Very few times are they outright non-altruistically looking out for me. Doesn't happen. Not in the system we have. You got to go out and look at the choices within the investment they're offering you. If it makes sense, do it. If it doesn't make sense, you have the option of going with Fidelity, or you have the option, which is the third option, you could just leave the money in there. Yeah. I would not recommend that because if you leave the money in there, then you really you can't take advantage of possibly things that you could possibly take advantage of, and but that's an option you have. It's the law. Nobody could force you to do anything you don't want to do.
Before you 10
Okay.
as of time of your top 10 investments.
I may have already taken way too much of you guys'
A
time.
question on this one.
Yeah.
Can you actually pool as a group
Yeah.
and do an investment like indexing as a group of people, or do you just have to do it individually?
No, you could do it as a group, but you not in these accounts that we've talked about. You could literally just get together. I mean, in fact, that's what pension plans do. That's what like a bunch of people do. They just get together, pool money together, and just manage an investment strategy. That's exactly what they do. So you could do it, but you're just going to have to go open a brokerage account at a brokerage house, and then because obviously as a group there's some legal implications, right? Like who has custody of the account, who makes decisions about investment options. There are all those things. It's almost like managing your will. You have to go make sure that all of those things are documented. That's where group things get complicated. But in terms of the investment itself, it's the same thing. Yeah, but just the legal aspect of how the account gets managed may be a little bit more complicated. Yeah. All right. So, yes, ma'am.
If you have IRA in the bank
Mm-hmm.
and you have 401k at work,
Mm-hmm.
which one is better?
Banks are notoriously bad at investments. So which bank are you talking about?
Chase, maybe?
My bank is this going to be broadcast on the internet? All right. I would go to a brokerage house if I am managing if it's about investment. I'll go to a brokerage house. Brokerage houses are set up for investment. E-Trade, Schwab, Fidelity. Fidelity is the biggest one. TD Ameritrade, all of this. And oh, by the way, if you're indexing, Vanguard, they all have the same index fund I just showed you. They all end in AIX. So Vanguard's would be VXAIX. Fidelity's is VXAI. It's the same thing. All of them are the same thing. Statistically, I could walk you guys through that, but it will be very boring. The funds are all designed to have something called a beta. Beta is just the risk that the fund takes. And think about when you're still in school, there's something called a gradient. Beta just tracks your risk versus return, and it stabilizes it consistent with the market. So all of the funds are exactly the same thing. That fund that I showed you, if you paid money for it, I'm going to respectfully say you're not very bright, because it is free. It's free, or practically free.
So what do you mean? Fidelity for investment, you're saying it's free, but it's index fund?
Yes.
Okay. They don't take any commission?
The market fund, why would they take commission? They're building a fund that reflects exactly what the market is. So all the risks are being managed by S&P. All Fidelity is just picking the thing to match it. They're not building their own. On their own, it's not free, right? When they alter the balance of the index, then that's their fund. They charge you money for it. So they could still get you the return, but if it's their fund, they're going to charge you money. And all of that is on their website. You could see it. Yeah? Okay, so now you were asking me, and then I thank you guys so much. You guys have been very generous with your time. So I'm going to leave you guys with this. You had asked me what I do with my money. So just tell you a little bit of story about me, and then I'll tell you. I didn't grow up in the U.S. Okay, I was born in a country called Cameroon. That's where I grew up, and I came to the U.S. when I was a little bit older. And when I came in, for some reason I was just fascinated with the market. But there's nobody in my circle that could tell me what I needed to know about stuff. I would see these numbers on TV and they seemed like magic to me. You know, everything just seems very complicated. But I was very interested in it. So over time, I just got interested and I was asking questions and I met people. In this space, not everybody is very honest with what you should do, and not everybody knows what they're talking about. So you end up getting, probably I would say, an over-index of bad advice as opposed to good advice. Just because people don't have sometimes the courage to just say, I don't know what I'm talking about. So they will say a lot of things, and you see that on TV all the time. Like somebody's going to say a lot of things, seems like a lot of words put together, but they don't mean anything. So over time, I got very interested. And I wanted to know, how is it that this system is a singular system that has made the most successful people without creating anything? How is that possible? Right? So, as I spent a lot of time in it, I met a lot of people, I went to school and all that stuff, I have my PhD in statistics, I was able to figure out it's not that complicated. Right? So once I figured it out, it became a passion of mine to say, I'm going to be like Paul Revere. I'm going to go to every place I can and let people know that this thing is not that complicated. If I could come from a country as small as Cameroon to the biggest economy in the world and figure out what seems like the most complicated system, and I'm not that smart, imagine who else could figure this stuff out? So I'm like a Paul Revere. When she came to me and she says, I want you to do this. My daughter actually was in a swimming competition tonight. And I happily would do it. And it's not just, there are tons of adults, the old people that are adults walking the street making a ton of money that are completely scared of the financial system. They're scared. I know this because I look at balance sheets of people. In the bank, we have people's entire data. You see people making all kinds of money. They can't manage their basic money. Just the basics of money, they can't do it. So that's why I'm passionate about this. I am extremely passionate about this. The very basic concepts you have to understand. Taxes are not your friend. We all have to pay taxes. They're not your friend. People with the most money don't pay taxes. There's a reason for that. It's a waste of money. When you give your money away, you have no control over how they manage it. And they're notoriously bad at managing your money. So when it comes to investment, if you have to understand investment, you have to understand taxes. Okay? What's his name? The guy who owns Amazon, Jeff Bezos. Richest man in the world. Pays more taxes than all of us in this room. Richest man in the world. His tax rate is effectively like zero. How is that possible? If you understand this, you understand that. Okay? The tax system is designed to be arbitrarily complex for the rest of us. Why is that? Because it was designed at a time when property was rewarded. Capital was rewarded more than labor. Your labor is considered replaceable. Why should I subsidize your labor? It's replaceable. If you're not there tomorrow, somebody else will take the job. Capital is not that mobile. There are few countries in the world that get most of the capital. So they have to be rewarded. They have to be incentivized. That means you got to throw money at it. So if you got capital, you want to be attracting money. In our system, labor doesn't get rewarded. I know they keep telling that, they tell us that all the time. And when it's rewarded, it's not rewarded at the same rate. That's why we don't talk about money when we go to work, right? Because it's not rewarded at the same rate. At my job, at the bank, we've got people making $20 million a year. There are also people at that same bank working the teller that are making $9 an hour. At the same bank. It's not equal. So you got to understand that. You got to understand fees. I'm trashing my own industry in front of you guys. My industry encourages me to go out to the community and talk about our products. This is why I like working at Citibank. Because it's okay. We partner with companies. I spend my free time going to the community to tell people, don't get these products. Credit card is not your friend. It's not your friend. If you cannot buy something, if you can't buy it with cash, don't buy it. I guarantee you, there are people in the bank that are smarter than you, that are controlling your behavior far more than you think. The average person walks in through life and they think they control their own behaviors. It's not true. Yes?
So if credit card is not your friend, how are you supposed to build credit
that's a good question. We've created a system that relies on credit, and we require you to have credit so you could be reliable, right? So you could make it your friend. For most people, it's not your friend. When you want to make it your friend, you're going to have to behave other than the way the product is designed for you like the behavior that the product is designed to solicit from you. Does that make sense? So, the best behavior from my point of view, from a credit card, is this. You have a balance with me. Every month you go late, and then you pay. I could almost send you flowers. It's the best behavior in the world. Because and there are millions of people like this. It baffles me. Every month I'll look at the data, and there are people who consistently go late. For some reason, I don't know if they pay after payday or whatever, but they go late. That late fee hits their account, and they just pay. And they're consistent. The balance never goes down. They do that for 20 years. They're consistent, not on the behavior I want, that I've encouraged here, but on the opposite behavior, and I see that all the time. Millions more than you guys would believe is true. And I know this because my bank is declaring revenue on the street every day. So it's like that whole adage, right? If you go to Vegas and you think you could win, just look at the street and all the lights and the buildings, and you know the house always wins. So because of these behaviors that and these are human, these are things we're designed with. We're designed to be lazy. And so you have industries that are they're there to take advantage of all these behaviors. So credit products are good if you use them other than the way they're intended to be used. By that, what I mean is, if I'm going to I have credit card, I probably have like 15 credit cards myself. But I don't carry a balance on the cards. I don't use anything other than credit. All I use is my credit cards. I use them to get miles. I use them to get cash back. But there's specific behaviors that I use for specific cards. It is tedious. Just to know when Discover is doing the 5% rotating category, so I could use it. I have a spreadsheet in my house. I know when we use which card for what and all that stuff. Then you're benefiting from it. But if it's getting a behavior from you that you're not in control of, then it's not your friend. And that's what it does to most people. We know the reason our business exists is that we know when you walk into a store with a credit card, you spend 30% more than if you walked in with cash. We know this. So we want you to walk into a store with a credit card. Yeah, it's that simple. So we've talked about fees, we've talked about taxes. You've got to think of your money you've got to think of yourself as an entity, right? If you have $500 or you've got $100, your goal when you wake up in the morning has to be the same goal I walk into Citibank with. I've got to maximize the capital that I have. It's that simple. We talked about how money determines your value in the system that we've built, and this system has survived for 9,000 years. I'm actually currently reading a book that was talking about Egypt in 7,000 years ago. It was the same concept. People mattered based on the value that they had. They either had cattle then or strength, whatever it is they were contributing. That's what we have today. So if you're going to take that $5,000 and you're going to get the minimum amount of value, it means you're actually going out to society and say, I don't want to matter. I don't want to care. I think it's a very bad thing to be living every day with, right? We talked about the 86,400 seconds. Spending your life saying, I don't want to optimize value that I could otherwise do for free. Doesn't make any sense to me. So what I'll leave you guys with is to think about those things. Figure out how you could get advice, not paid advice. probably a lot of people willing to receive. If you could walk into Fidelity tomorrow with your IRA, that same question you just asked me, someone's going to charge you money to explain to you pretty much what I just told you. And even further than that, they're going to consistently charge you to kind of roll it over and pick something for you. There's no guarantee you're going to make money on it. But it's all set up to happen exactly that way. Everything we just went, I came here with no notepad, right? I had notes to take the questions that you guys gave me. But I wanted to use resources that are all available online. I went to investor.com, which is a government website you could go into and get basic questions answered. How would fees impact my investment? It's all there. There are all calculators that are out there where you could go in and actually just ask those basic questions and get them answered. You could reach out. You have smart friends like Ellen. She could answer a lot of things. I just know people that I'm close to that I could reach out to that I trust and say, I've got $1,000. What would you do with your money? If they would do it with theirs, and I trust them, you have to go through life and trust people. I would do it with mine. And then I went through all of the resources that I went through. You could feel free if you want to share that with everybody. She has friends. A lot of life is about networking, right? Like if you know people and they know people, I came here. Hopefully, I've been able to add a little bit of value. But the honor of meeting you guys today was through her. So, and I would suspect everybody has friends that you guys could connect with. You should know that most people out in the world have an interest in themselves and taking advantage of stuff too, right? So just because somebody offers, like the company offers opportunities or options or something, does not necessarily mean it's the best for you. So I think I would always recommend that you guys think about yourself and then how to maximize opportunities that are out there. The last thing I would mention that was on the list was about giving. I think we all survive in a community that thrives because of our ability to contribute to it. I am passionate about helping people make more because I believe as the pie gets bigger, even if you keep cutting the same percentage of that pie, by definition, you'll be contributing more, right? So if I do 10% of $1 million, is bigger than 10% of $1,000, right? So my interest is really to get the pie bigger, because even if you just stay consistent with your 10% contribution, if I get you bigger, then you're contributing more, which is what my interest is in. So hopefully I was able to add some value today. Thank you guys so much for your time. Yes?
What would you do with $1,000 now if someone would give you?
What would I do with $1,000 now? This is February. I would index it.
So where do you go to index yourself? What site?
Fidelity is a very good one. I would recommend. Fidelity is actually very well known for their research. A lot of the other ones are not as concise when it comes to research. Fidelity is good. Vanguard has very, very good funds. But like I mentioned to you, so long as you're indexing, it does not matter where you go. It's all the same thing. Now, the one thing I have to mention, your investment dollars are different from your deposit dollars. Your deposit dollars are guaranteed up to $250,000. If you decide you want to go start investing, you should know there's always a risk you're going to lose money. And that money is not guaranteed by the government. So, yeah. Lose it. Yeah, I don't know what you're investing in, but if Bernie Madoff, yeah. I've never met anybody in my life, but it's possible. Yeah. If you're buying individual things, yes. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
What age average should need to be aggressive or conservative?
Aggressive or conservative depends on what you're investing in. So I think he was mentioning earlier bonds. if you want to be conservative, so if you've got money, you don't want to risk it, you just want to make slightly above inflation, right? Bonds are, US government bonds are the safest investments in the entire world. The US government has never defaulted on its debt, so by definition, that investment is very safe. But what that means is, investing is like, it's like basic supply and demand. Because it's safe, you get a lot of money pouring in. And you have something called a yield, which the more money pouring in. So the more the market is, everybody is scared, people take their money and they put it in some safe stuff, and that means the money you could make from that stuff goes down, right? I mean, it just, so so it's that simple. If you want to be aggressive, on the whale end of stuff, you do equities, which is what somebody was talking about in the room before. Buying individual stocks, like having somebody come to you at work and say, let me go buy Exxon or Microsoft. That's when you're way aggressive. Yeah.
What I was trying to say, there is a certain age. With someone like you, then they will tell you, don't go that aggressive because you're already in the bracket of a certain age. You should have done it younger, and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to say, between what age you should stay at least in the middle, but not to go too aggressive.
Right. It depends on several factors. Generally, it's you start to get to your 60s. Obviously, depends on, is that person healthy? Some people know themselves. So some people could say, I'm going to work till I'm 80, right? And if you're sitting there, somebody cares about you, they're going to sit down, they're going to know all of those factors about you. What else do you have? If you were to lose this for 2-3 years, would that impact you? So it depends on all of that. But generally, as people start to get closer to Social Security, that kind of stuff, you want to be very conservative. You see more annuities being recommended to them. You see more bonds being recommended to them. You could have equities make, like the stuff I just showed, could make 20% of their portfolio just simply because people don't want them to lose a lot of their money. That's usually what happens. But it depends on, and all of this, somebody's going to sit down with you and go through very, very detailed, what do you have, what's your attitude toward risk, which is a huge one. What I've found over the years is, there are people, you take $10,000 from them, they're calling you more than your own family. They're like, Hensley, the market is down today, what are we doing? And you're like, what? Why did I take this person's money? Come in, let me send you a check. So it depends on all of that, but I think generally when people start to get into their 50s and 60s, if they're not in good health, depending on what profession they're in, because the economy today, some professions now are not as hot as they used to be. So if they get fired, the likelihood to get a new job in that profession may not be as good. So somebody is going to have that comprehensive conversation before they make recommendations.
I know. There's something he forgot to talk about for the parents.
The parents, 529. 529. Please. So here was my approach. The day my kids were born, I don't know how if this is consistent with every hospital, but the hospital that my kids were born, they didn't get their social on the same day. I think it took like the next day or so. I already had a plan. The minute the Social Security came in the same day, I knew. So in the country, you've got Utah and Illinois have the best 529 plans. So before my kid was born, obviously there was 9 months where I was just sitting around not doing much. But I had already done the research just to understand which 529 plans were better and why. 529 you could open from any state. You don't need to reside in the state. You could open 529 from any state. So once you get the Social Security number, then you really have 2 choices, which is what I talked about before. You have to be disciplined and you have to be consistent, right? And you just have to keep at it and make sure that you're returning above inflation and college tuition, the rates of increase in college tuition. That's it. For kids, it's that simple.
There was one person who told told me when they went to get the money, there were fees that were being charged.
For 529?
For 529.
That means they were trying to get the money for something other than school.
Oh.
Yes.
So once it grows, you can just take it out directly and pay for the school? No
Yes.
taxes are taken out?
No, it goes directly to the school, pays for anything education related, room and board and education related. Yes.
So if the child decides that they don't want an education, what do you do with the money as the parent?
Well, they're okay. So every parent worries about this. Every parent says, "What if my kid never goes to school?" There are a number of things you could do. Hopefully by that time you've made very smart choices where you have nieces and nephews where you could help out there. That's one. Other things you could do is you could actually cash out the money. You pay the penalty. Hopefully by that time, over time, I think the penalty is somewhere around 10% of what you made. That's nothing if you've consistently built that kind of wealth over time. So there are a number of things you could do, but the worst one would be cashing it out for non-education purposes. But even that is still far better than not doing that. Yeah. So that's the one thing a lot of people say all the time, like, well, I'm not doing this. What if my kid does it? It's like, it's.
So you go to Fidelity too for the 529?
No. So the state of Illinois, 529s are managed through the state. So they have the state of Illinois, the website is called Bright Start. So there are two types of college plans I'm not going to bother you guys with. One of them you could pay for college today. The price of today for when your kid becomes college age. So if you do the inflation and you manage that over time, that is more restrictive. That money has already gone to the school. You will never recover that. The other one is to do a 529, which that grows and you have the flexibility to do what we're talking about. So you could just go to Bright Start Savings, and that's the Illinois one, and just open an account and link it to your checking account. Then go to your checking account and just say, I want to set up direct deposit just like you would do on your cell phone account, and just say, just put $100 every month into that stuff. That's it.
Just real quick, have you seen the stuff that Berger or Gerber?
Gerber is doing? Yeah.
Sending stuff to parents in the
Yes.
mail. What is
They send that to my own kid. The savings bond.
Or is it 529? What is that?
No, it's a life insurance plan that they have. Think about it this way. Infant mortality in the U.S., remember I started by saying I'm going to say this in the numbers sense. I recognize that if somebody's gone through this, it's obviously different emotionally. But when they do insurance in the U.S., in any country, we look at it based on the mortality rates. The mortality rate for an infant in the U.S. it's higher than other industrialized countries, but it's very, very low. So when Gerber comes out to parents and says, I want you to buy this thing, you're buying a policy that having an insurance on a child it's not a very bright decision. Those are the kind of things that they're selling. That's what Gerber has. 529 for kids, there's no other thing. Not even close. 529 is what you should be putting your money in. Two benefits. One is the savings and the savings options that you have. Two is that it offsets your income. In the state of Illinois, single person, $10,000, married couple, $20,000, offset your taxable income. That's a state tax per child. So, hopefully, okay.
Is there any person whose question has not been answered just before we close? Is there any person whose question is
I may not have touched on the real estate stuff, but I'll send you some material you can pass on to people. The thing I would leave with people there is you make money in real estate two ways. You get a physical house that you can rent to people, or you start to buy real estate investments, which are part of a continuation of some of these things I was talking about. When people talk about making money in real estate, it's not in the house that you're living in. That does not make you money. Okay? The house you're living in costs you money. Yeah, sorry. But I didn't touch on that elaborately because once you get to that level where you're diversifying that much, I think you should be sitting down with people that you trust to actually take you through more in-depth with some of the options that we talked about. I was more focusing on if you've got some money loose staying at home and you want to make sure that that money is working for you, that's what I was focusing on.
Okay, so I would assume everybody is sort of, we touched areas where everybody had interest. Is that correct? Tasha, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Okay, so if we don't have any further questions, because I know of time, I think some people have to work, and some people have to either go to work tomorrow morning, and he has to go back to Chicago. Are we all good before we do a prayer?
Yeah, good.
Yeah. So I want to thank you so much. There is some material that Hensley had printed that children would work on, but because we couldn't get somebody else to go with the children, we have printed materials where we would encourage everybody to take home, work with your child or your grandchild or yourself to make sure that you're understanding the concept of money, please. We have materials we want everybody to take home. My kind husband was did the printing for me. He did the printing for me, so please, we need people to go through and look at this material. It is very good. I looked at it yesterday and I was like, oh, okay, I think I need to. So we have material that I need everybody to take. We're very happy to have you. Michael Campbell?
Yes.
Okay. Michael was one of the guests that I was hoping would speak in the afternoon. Remind me your church, please.
The All Nations Fellowship,
Okay.
Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Okay. So he's a Pathfinder director there. He's a financial planner. He wants to see you. Before you go.
I will chat with him.
Yeah, so that's the thing. If everybody was edified in one way or the other, I'll say let's stand for prayer. And we really want to thank you for your community work.
Thank you.
And we do have refreshments downstairs. There's a lot of food, please. There is a lot of refreshments, guys. Please don't go. There is a lot of refreshments. Susan made cookies. Millie made something. There's a lot of food downstairs. Please.
If you don't mind me saying, I want to thank everybody. I know topic about money could be uncomfortable or it could be very dry. The fact that you guys allowed me to come into your home and talk about this, welcome me to do that, and the fact that you spent your time engaging with me is something that I'm really, really grateful for. Evan knows how to reach me. If you're in the city, you want to chat, and if you're just downtown hanging around, you want to sit down and talk about whatever, please feel free to do that. I will walk away saying that I've made some new friends, so don't feel like if you see me somewhere, we should act like strangers, okay? So, and if you think there's something that I should be doing more of, then please let me know as well.
Where's your office? What's the address?
Thank you.
No, don't send anybody. I'll tell you.